let's get into the next topic. So, we talked about this a little bit before we went live. Breaking news: our division rivals, their starting quarterback Derek Carr has officially retired. For those of you that were paying attention, the Saints paid Carr $38 million on March 9th of this year. What they did by giving him that money up front is they wanted to spread out that hit of $38 million over 5 years. Now, what happened is when he retired, he left $28.75 million of that $38.75 million that was paid on the table. He gets to keep $10 million of it. But what happens is when you retire and you prorate contracts out, all that money accelerates. So all the money that has been pushed out in prior years gets recognized between this year and next year. Bottom line, long story short, the Saints are going to have a dead cap hit in total of $50 million that needs to be recognized this year and next year, just depending on when the retirement's processed. If it's processed in June 1 or before June 1, that's what gets determined on how much, when the bulk of that $50 million is going to be recognized. But it sounds like they're going to process it after 6/1, so it's going to split something like $13 million this year, which will be a savings of $7 million, and then $35 million next year, which will save them $25 million against the cap because he was slated to count $60 million. Jeff, in total, this guy won 14 of the 27 games he started, averaged a little over 225 yards per game, a touchdown and a half, and threw half a pick in those 27 games he started. Bottom line, was this a bust for the Saints?
I hope every quarterback decision they make is a bust, right? Like that. I mean, fuck the Saints. I think they really thought he was going to be the heir apparent to Drew Brees for, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years at the end of his career. And that obviously just was not the case. And it could happen to a better franchise, to be quite honest with you. I can't stand the Saints. I'm glad that he retired because it leaves them in an even worse position than they are now. I mean, you look at that quarterback room and you just start laughing. It's hilarious to look at what that quarterback room looks like after what it looked like for almost 20 years. Those Drew Brees years were some really good years for them. And obviously they got a Super Bowl out of it and they got some other things out of it. And it's been, the Saints Minus will be famous on Comedy Central moving forward because it's just hilarious to see what has happened to that franchise over the course of the last 5 years. I for one am here for it. Looking over on our YouTube channel, ATLF checks in and says, is there a chance we trade Cousins to the Saints? Nope. No. The Saints would have to offer something absolutely absurd for the Falcons to say, sure, we'll help you out. Because no matter what you think of Kirk Cousins, we're not in the business of helping out division rivals. I would hope that Terry Fontenot, I don't care where he started his career, I would hope that he wouldn't piss on them if they were on fire, right? And so I don't see a scenario where we send them Kirk Cousins unless, as Andrew pointed out, maybe there's a scenario where they offer a first. And at that point, you would have to give it some serious consideration. But just out and out, no, they would not. I mean, it would have to be a pretty special package. So, look, I'm happy he's gone. It really wasn't any sweat off our back. I mean, let's be honest. Taysom Hill is the one quarterback in that room we always have to worry about because, no matter how bad he plays, he always seems to find a fucking way to come around and beat the Falcons, right? And so, Derek Carr is gone. Great. I'll be honest with you. I woke up about 30 minutes ago, so I hadn't even seen the news, Andrew, until you said, "Hey, man, did you see Carr retired?" I was like, "No, wait." And so, look, I will say I do feel like the Carr brothers have had a really bad go at this NFL thing, right? I thought Derek Carr, for his time in Houston, if he had been anywhere else, I think Derek Carr probably goes down as one of the best quarterbacks to ever play the game because that dude had every tool in the toolbox to be great. And unfortunately for him, he got sacked like 3,000 times a year and it ended his career early because of injuries, right? And so, you hate to see it happen to guys because all in all, David does seem to be a really good guy. He just happened to play in his career with a really shitty franchise. So, you hate to see it happen to really good guys. You always, as a matter of fact, this conversation I've had with my son recently, games, whether it's baseball, football, basketball, the game demands your time, effort, attention. It demands a lot from you. But then the game will also trash you and throw you away before you're ever ready. And you hate to see it happen to guys. But this is just another example. The game was done with David Carr, and it sucks for him. It's great for I think for everybody else involved. But again, the Falcons' issue has never been David Carr. It's always been Taysom Hill for the last 5+ years. Even when he was there with Drew Brees, right? Like he still seemed to be the damn problem versus the Falcons. So if we can find a way to get rid of Taysom Hill too, universe, that would be great. But yeah, David Carr, it is what it is.
I don't know what it is with Taysom Hill. The second he plays us, he just becomes this electric QB, and he's a Falcon killer. That's bottom line. So, yeah, I'm happy that he's 34 and probably his best years are behind him, but I would not be surprised if he just gets up against the game against us and throws up 3 touchdowns.
Oh, he looks like a damn Hall of Famer every time he takes the field versus the Falcons. I mean, it's absolute. He's going to be the guy. He's going to go into the Hall of Fame because of how he treated the Falcons, and he's going to walk up wearing a Falcons shirt just to gut punch one more damn time.
So just for people, that aren't as familiar with Derek Carr's career, he obviously started out with the Raiders, and, he was middle of the pack, but then in 2016, he had a pretty nice run. He led the Raiders to a 12-4 record, I believe. And he was actually third in MVP voting. What happened that year, though, is I think the last game of the season, or second to last, he got injured and couldn't play in the wild card game. So then fast forward 4 years later, I believe we're in 2020 now, and Vic Bisaccia is the head coach, I believe, and they had that crazy game against the Chargers where if they both tied, they would both make it to the playoffs. But then the Chargers got a little aggressive and the Raiders end up kicking the game-winning field goal. They play against the Bengals that game. Long story short, that wild card game where the Raiders went into Cincinnati, that they were pretty freaking close to knocking off the Bengals. And that's the year the Bengals went to the Super Bowl. So, long story short, Carr obviously didn't have the best go in the NFL, but he definitely had some moments. He could have, that Raiders team that played the Bengals, they weren't half bad, so they could have definitely done some damage. And circling back, would we trade Cousins to the Saints? Just keep in mind that the Saints offensive line, They have 2 good tackles in Fuaga and Banks. They have a guard, Cesar Ruiz. They have weapons, Shaheed, Olave. Obviously, you have Kamara back there. I don't know that you want to insert Kirk Cousins into that offense. It might not. I would love if JPJ and Walker just tee off on him, but let's not give them a pulse unless we have to. If they throw a first-round pick at us, absolutely, because if Cousins goes down again, that first-round pick, everyone's bragging about how our first-round pick in 2026 is going to be top 5. Cousins goes down. And even if Cousins is there, there's a shot that pick could be, a top 10, top 5 pick. You have to take that seriously. But other than that, I can't see them trading him for a third just to clear the money off the books. It's not worth it. Eat the money and let him be the best backup in the NFL.
Yeah, not again, not to the division rival, right? Not to the rival, not just the division rival, to the rival. So no, I just don't see it happening again unless the Saints are absolutely drunk one night and drunk text the Falcons and say, hey, we'll give you a first, and the Falcons jump at it, and now you have a binding contract, right? So I just don't see it happening.
Yeah, I can see other teams doing it, but the thing is, the Saints aren't in that mode where they're like, we're Super Bowl or bust, right? There are some other teams that if their QB goes down and their coaches are kind of like on their last legs in the NFL, those teams, it makes sense for them to overpay for Cousins. But I can't see that happening with New Orleans.